Another day, another Matt Walsh meltdown that makes no sense. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, your home for independent commentary and analysis from a nonpartisan perspective on politics, media, internet culture, and more. We're going to talk about some more of the fallout from the now super mega viral hearing that Dr. Fauci just did before the Senate, where he was grilled by these Republican lawmakers, praised by the Democrats for his handling of the COVID pandemic as the head of the NIAID and the leader of the coronavirus task force for many years when that was all going down. Anyway, he faced all these questions and just pled the fifth over and over again, which means he was invoking his right to not incriminate himself, and he basically stonewalled and refused to answer any questions. Now, the context here is also that Dr. Fauci has been pardoned on his way out. President Joe Biden issued him a full and unconditional pardon for everything that happened dating back to 2014. So, whatever alleged crimes Republican critics insist that Fauci was responsible for, such as potentially lying to Congress about gain-of-function research and other things, not much you can do about it other than call it out and hold him accountable. But that's not enough for full-time pundit and Daily Wire star Matt Walsh, the conservative critic who is very unhappy with Republican lawmakers, despite them very effectively, I thought, scrutinizing Dr. Fauci and calling him out at the hearing. And anyway, here's the headline from Mediaite. Pro-MAGA pundit rips GOP senators grandstanding at Fauci hearing. Now, I'll just say that I do agree there's a lot of grandstanding in Congress and playing for the cameras at the hearings. And there was some of that in this, but also I don't understand what else they're supposed to be doing. Matt has thoughts, though. Let's consider them. Conservative commentator Matt Walsh was left unimpressed by the performances of Republican lawmakers at Wednesday's hearing with Dr. Anthony Fauci. Fauci appeared on Capitol Hill to testify on his guidance during the COVID-19 pandemic. Republicans have accused the former chief medical advisor to the president of endangering the public by promoting the COVID-19 vaccine and even using the pandemic to enrich himself. During Wednesday's hearing, Fauci was involved in multiple heated moments involving Republican lawmakers. Senator Josh Hawley, for example, tried to get him to stop pleading the Fifth Amendment by asking the doctor a series of basic, harmless questions. When that didn't work, Hawley quickly went on the attack and accused Fauci of getting rich during the pandemic. And anyway, reacting to the hearing, Walsh suggested on X/Twitter that it wouldn't amount to anything because Fauci was unlikely to be held accountable for his actions. Now, this comes even though Senator Rand Paul already announced that he's going to be holding a vote on holding Fauci in contempt of Congress, at which point they would refer him to the DOJ for a possible prosecution. Now, the question would only be whether his Fifth Amendment rights protects his ability to just stonewall and refuse to answer any questions, including questions like, what color tie are you wearing? And that'll have to be worked out through the legal and judicial process. I don't know, but they really are doing literally everything they possibly can to hold Dr. Fauci accountable. But the pundit class, right, just loves to complain, doesn't actually know or care how anything works. So Matt Walsh went off in this tweet that went viral. Let's look at that. Here's what he wrote. Wow, did you hear what those Republican congressmen said to that bad guy in the hearing? LOL, man, they really ripped him apart. It was so awesome. What's that? Oh no, the bad guy won't be arrested or charged with any crime or suffer any consequence of any kind at all. No, there will be no follow-up on the hearing, no relevant legislation passed in response to it, no changes of any kind made at all ever. But did you see the viral clip of that one senator? He even used a cuss word, a real cuss word. He's so tough and brave. I'm so impressed, aren't you? So I think the implication here is pretty obvious. Matt Walsh is deriding these Republican lawmakers, which, by the way, I'm usually pretty critical of these Republican lawmakers, but he is kind of sneering at them and accusing them of showboating and not doing anything. And the reason this kind of rubbed me the wrong way for Matt Walsh is because he's either demonstrating a total ignorance, despite the huge enormity of his platform and audience and reach, of how things work and what's actually happening. Because, for example, some policies have changed. Some things have changed. For example, the Trump administration put back into place restrictions on the kind of dangerous research that Dr. Fauci funded. So there have been policy changes, first of all. They are going to vote to hold Fauci in contempt of Congress. So they're exercising the legislative power that they have. And I do agree that the swearing and the guy, Senator Bernie Moreno, who dropped an F-bomb, I do think it's performative. I do think it can be cringe. But it's not clear, first of all, that there will be no consequences of any kind, but that's possible. Yet that's because of the reality of the situation that we're in, where Dr. Fauci was issued a full pardon. And I think Matt knows that, but just doesn't care, is just kind of pounding his fists on the table like a child and saying, "Wah, do more," even though you absolutely can't. I mean, you can't charge him for any crime that he's pardoned for. That's not a thing. That's not an option. So what does he want them to do exactly? Unless Matt is just going full fascist, which he has it several times in the past, and suggested that the President Trump or the Trump administration should just disregard the Supreme Court, disregard courts, do whatever you want, not follow the rule of law. But if you're a Republican lawmaker who still ostensibly cares about the rule of law, then you can only do things that are legal or for which an avenue exists in the legal process. And there is no process to prosecute someone for first off, these are lawmakers. They're not prosecutors, so they can't even prosecute anyone. All they can do is refer someone to the DOJ, and the DOJ has to prosecute them. So bashing senators for why he hasn't been charged with a crime makes no sense. But anyway, there's no legal process to prosecute someone for a crime for which they've been pardoned, a full and unconditional pardon. That's not a thing. You can't do it. I'll even read you here from a SCOTUS blog. Quote, "The Supreme Court has made clear that subject to the exception for impeachment, the president's power to grant pardons is, quote, unlimited, with virtually no oversight or limiting role for Congress." In Ex parte Garland, which involved President Andrew Johnson's pardon of a lawyer who had served in the legislature of the Confederacy, the court indicated that the president's pardon power covers all federal offenses. The president can issue a pardon at any point after a crime is committed and before, during, or after criminal proceedings have taken place. The president cannot, however, pardon someone for future crimes. Anyway, so the point there is that there's really nothing they can do. And yet he's just bashing them anyway and complaining. And it's really quite easy to do that from the sidelines when you're just a podcaster or you've just got your studio. And I understand that's what I do as well, but I try to be reasonable and fair and nuanced about it. Whereas Matt Walsh just gets on his high horse and just blasts these Republicans. Rhino sellouts and frauds or what have you. They're not. They're actually just dealing with reality. And it's very easy to sit in a multi-million-dollar set at the Daily Wire and complain because you don't actually have to do anything or deal with the actual constraints of the system. So if you can just go after them, but it makes no sense. It's totally unfair and illegitimate criticism. And the other piece here that I think is important to note is that some people have tried to claim that oh, well, Fauci's pardon is illegitimate because President Biden signed it with an auto pen or President Biden was mentally impaired or what have you. That's not a thing. You are absolutely legally entitled to sign a pardon with an auto pen. That no judge will rule that the pardon is illegitimate because of that. And President Biden was very clearly aware of his intention to pardon Dr. Fauci. I mean, you could actually question whether he's aware of every single person that he pardoned, but that's one where he definitely intended to pardon him. And the pardon power is, like they said, constitutionally pretty much unlimited. So whine as much as you want about it, but there's no mechanism by which you could claim Biden's pardons don't count because of his mental state or something. There's no constitutional mechanism for that. And I'm not sure you even want there to be if there was, right? So, for example, if we could just claim that President Biden's pardons are somehow null and void because was mentally addled or what, which he was, to be clear, but there's nothing about that in the Constitution, right? There's no mechanism in our system for that, and you wouldn't want there to be, because I promise you this: the next Democrats that take charge are going to say the same, that Donald Trump had dementia and was a crazy madman, and by that logic, all the pardons he's surely going to issue on his way out wouldn't count, and all those people would be fair game. So you kind of have to just take the pardon power for what it is, and there's no realistic or legal or constitutional way to actually circumvent it or just throw your toys up in the air and say, wah, I don't like Biden's pardons. I think they're bad, so they shouldn't count, is not how it works. And there's two things about this that really deeply bother me. One is just like the audacity to be a pundit and just sniping from the sidelines and constantly criticizing, and yet not actually doing so in a way that acknowledges the restrictions and nuances that face people who actually do stuff and who are actually in the positions of power. So you should at least try to be somewhat fair to them if you're sitting on the sidelines, as I am, to be clear. I do the same thing that Matt Walsh does. But I think it comes off as extremely obtuse to bash people for inaction just from the total lack of constraints of Podcastistan, and yet you pretend that the actual realities they face don't exist, or not even bothering to research or inform yourself. But then there's the flip side, which I actually worry about with Matt Walsh, is because he has so many times in the past called for the president to just disregard Supreme Court rulings, ignore judges, do whatever you want. I wonder if that's actually what his true intent here is. Not to complain that they're not doing something and he doesn't understand as to why they can't, but that he just thinks actually they should just go authoritarian and just dispense with the rule of law and start locking up their political enemies. Constitutional or legal or judicial processes be damned. I suspect that might actually be the case. I mean, he ironically calls himself a theocratic fascist in his bio, but I've watched Matt Walsh get more and more extreme and unhinged over the years, and I'm not so sure it's a totally ironic description anymore. I don't know, guys. That's my take. You'll have to let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure you're subscribed if you aren't yet. Do hit the like button. Do consider becoming a channel member to support my work. I am independent. I don't have the Daily Wire propping me up or funneling millions of dollars into promoting me, so I need support from viewers like you. Hit the join button or click the link in the pinned comment, and we'll leave it there for this one and be back with more real soon.